Appendix N, the Emissary's Kit. The standard issue of the bow lamps, as finalized by the Quartermaster's Office under S. Ardent and revised across 40 years of crossings, reproduced from the core manual's most copied page, with the annotations that the field has added, the manual's official text in plain type, the field's accumulated marginalia preserved, because, per the office's own doctrine, the issue list is what we thought they'd need, the marginalia are what they needed. 1. Copy, the book, wrapped for crossing. To be given away at the bearer's discretion, which discretion, the office notes with resignation, has historically rounded to immediately. Replacement copies meet the caravans at every junction. Field note, give it before they ask. The asking costs the broken ones too much. Field note, later hand. And write your own margin in it first. A clean copy is a pamphlet. A written-in copy is a colleague. Field note, latest hand. Confirmed across 19 contacts. The first thing every keeper reads is not the famous chapters. It's your margins. They check whether real people have been here before them. Be evidence. 1. Pot. Collapsible. Big. Not the right-sized pot. See Appendix J. Field note. The pot is the credential. You can say we come from 40 worlds of the soft way, or you can start cooking for more people than are present and let them work it out. The second is faster. Field note. In 9 years of crossings, I have never once finished a contact with leftovers. Make of that what you will. I have made of it a religion. Rations, protein, portable. Always 2. Specification unchanged since the founding and non-negotiable. Whatever the bearer carries to eat, they carry 2, and the second is not a reserve. Field note. The trainees always ask why the manual doesn't just say 1 to share, because share is what you do with a surplus. The doctrine is harder. The second one was never yours. You are carrying somebody's, and you haven't met them yet. Pack accordingly, walk accordingly, and you will find, as the founder found at a hubcap fire, that the carrying changes how you enter every room. Field note. In Vergefolk script. Translated. My grandfather's grandfather received the original second bar. We are aware the humans think the doctrine is about food. Let them. It is about the half-second before the giving, when the stranger watches you decide what they are. Carry the bar so that the deciding is already done. 1. Lamp, bow pattern. Festival grade, hand-carried, the Corps' sigil and standard. Functionally redundant on most worlds, issued anyway. Lit at every contact. Field note. It is not redundant. It is the only equipment that works at full power while still in your hand at a distance. They see the light before they see you, and a carried light reads, on every world surveyed, as the same sentence. Someone is coming, and is not hiding it. Predators don't announce. The lamp says the rest of the kit before you're in earshot. Field note. On Hiss they ask why our lamp is so small. Tell them the truth. Because it is 1 boat's worth. The fog is large. The boats are many. No lamp has to be the sun. Stationery. Paper, pencils, spares of both. Quantity, more than seems sensible. In honor of the recorder, who brought paper. And in working memory of the founding finding, history turns on stationery. Field note. Half my contacts. The keeper's first stable hour was the hour I handed them a notebook and said, the first entry is the hardest. I'll wait. The kit's quietest weapon. Field note. Keep a pencil stub from your own first crossing. You will eventually meet the keeper who cannot start writing because their hands shake. Trade them your stub for their new pencil, and tell them whose method the stub learned. Shaking hands wrote the whole literature. Tell them. Every word of it. 1. Spear, or local equivalent. Per the founding session, carry what your hosts will need to see you put down. Field note. Practice the setting down until it is 1 motion, unhurried, complete. Weapon to doorpost, hands open, sit. The motion is a sentence in the only universal grammar. Drill it like the carry teams drilled. Field note. The one the office finally printed in the manual proper after 20 years in the margins. And when the day comes that you must pick it up again, there are such days. We do not pretend otherwise. Pick it up in front of them, explain while you do it, and set it down again after, visibly, first of anyone. The setting down only means something from a hand they have seen choose. That is the whole difference between a guard and a neighbor, and the kit cannot make you a neighbor. It can only keep your hands honest while you become one. Item 7. The manual's famous blank line. Officially, bearer's discretion. 1 item, personal. Unofficially the most regulated slot in the kit, governed by 40 years of tradition. Item 7 is the thing you carry that proves to you what the rest of the kit proves to them. The founder's item 7s are recorded. A pair of slagged glasses frames, carried by the first elder of both on his single late crossing, returned to the shelf after. A slate chalk stub. A marathon bib. A pencil. Field note. Choose it badly at first. Everyone does. You will carry something impressive for 2 crossings, and then, in some ash, on some dike, your hand will find the thing it actually goes to. The ticket stub, the bent spoon, the button, and you will understand. The way the manual could never teach. The 7th item chooses you, at the moment you finally need to remember, on purpose. Carry the impressive thing until then. It's holding the seat. Total weight, full kit. Under what one tired person can carry at a dead run. By specification, forever, in honor of the peoples who taught us what wealth is. Final field note. Unsigned. In a hand the office has never identified and has declined to investigate. It all fits in one pack because it was always one thing. Book, pot, bar, lamp, paper. The put-downable spear. The chosen token. 7 shapes of the same sentence. You learn the sentence on your first contact, when the kit is on the ground between you and some shaking stranger at the end of their world. And every item comes out of the pack saying it, one after another, in its own dialect. And you finally hear what you've been carrying. We knew you'd be here. We packed for you. Sit down. You're who the second one is for. Appendix O. Pages from the notebook, Reconstructed. The original notebooks did not survive. Nothing physical crossed the dawns. The reader knows this by now better than any reader of any book has ever known anything. What survives is the reconstruction. The pages as E. Vance rewrote them from memory during the long telling, with M. Okonkwo attesting, each page initialed by both. The librarians select here the pages most requested by visitors, presented as written, abbreviations, cross-outs, capitals and all. Because, per the keeper's own instruction when the reconstruction began, if you clean it up, it stops being a notebook and becomes a scripture, and scriptures get admired instead of used. Leave the mess in. The mess is the method. Rolt. Page reconstructed from Loop 2. Things I know. Very short list. Add as earned. It repeats. 614. Me only? Confirm. Resonance number went up after dying. Coffee at Adiemi's. You've got writer's hands. Don't waste them. Not data. Keeping it anyway. Things I thought I knew. Cross out as falsified. About this. Is a breakdown about. Would be nicer. Isn't. About someone will come. About from revisit. Wrong tense maybe. Nobody comes to you. Someone could still come from you. Think about this when less tired. Page reconstructed from Loop 9. The Dread Ledger's founding. Dread on waking. 1 to 5 scale. Be honest. Nobody reads this but me. Ha. L52. L63. L73. L84. L94. 3 days at 4+ equals mandatory rooftop morning. No exceptions. Instrument maintenance is not cowardice. A cracked gauge reads wrong forever after. Note. You will want an exception every single time. The wanting is the gauge reading 4. Circular. Good. Let it catch you. Page reconstructed from Loop 15. After the first dub meeting. He gave me the glasses. He gave me the glasses. I have nothing for this page. The strategy section is on the next page. This page is just so there's somewhere it's written down. Page reconstructed from Loop 31. Morning after the first day 1. We saw day 1. 14, alive at dawn. Wall held, choir broke on it. Things to remember when this gets hard again. It will, the gauge says so. 1. The wall rang. 400 years of physics and the best data I ever took meant sand rings. 2. Dub laughed. Gravy ate a gloam spawn like a party snack. Maya cried and said it was different. It was. 3. You are allowed exactly one morning of feeling like this. Then back to work. The win is a foothold, not a summit. 4. Added at the bottom. Different pencil. Later. Kept the morning anyway. 2 mornings. Sue me. Note from the management. The management approves. Footholds are for standing on. You keep forgetting why you're climbing. It's for the mornings. It was always for the mornings. Page reconstructed from the bad stretch. Loops 35 to 36. Included at Mo's insistence over the author's objection. Her note appended. Didn't get up today. Bind 2 of not getting up. No entry. That's the entry. Next dawn. Got up. Not because of anything. Because Gravy put his head on the worst thought, and it got hard to breathe dramatically under a 90-kilo lizard. Note for the method. Sometimes the method is a lizard. Write that down properly. Someday, people should know the floor is this low, and you can still get up off it. M.O. He fought me on including this page for a year. His argument, keepers will read it and think the line's founder was weak. My argument, keepers will read it at their own dawn 2 of not getting up, which every one of them will have, and they will see the floor of the man in the songs, and the floor will hold them the way it held him. The page stays. Weakness is the wrong word for the floor. The floor is part of the building. Ask any builder. Approved over objection. Initialed. M.O. E.V. Page reconstructed from Loop 52. The quiet loops era. Banked low again today. Tier I held at EY. Didn't claim floor 6. Again. 11 loops standing at a finished door not opening it. Patience ledger. Spent today. 1 loop. Balance. Unknown. Fuel says maybe 7. The hardest discipline isn't doing the impossible thing. It's not doing the possible one. Nobody writes songs about the 11 loops of not opening a door. Note to the eventual book. If there's a book. Write the song anyway. The waiting was the war too. The last reconstructed page. Loop 64. Written 2140. The final night. Duplicated from the operations ledger by the keeper's request, so that the notebook, which began alone on an eviction notice, ends in 5 hands. Initialed EV, MO, SA, HR, and a Verge folk glyph that translates, Dub, who was there for all of it, including the parts the human paper missed. Last page of the last notebook. 64 loops of pages, and the summary fits in the margin. Woke alone at 6:14. Loop 1. Going down to the dock with everyone I love, and a plan made of all of them. Lao 64. That's the whole experiment. That's the result. P. Whatever. Publish. And one instruction for whoever reconstructs this someday, if the someday happens. Start the archive with the eviction notice, if you can remember what it said. I can't anymore. Good. Some things the universe is allowed to keep without a backup. Everything else, write it down. All of it. The dread numbers and the glasses page and the lizard floor and the rang like a bell. Somebody's going to need the whole mess. It's going to be okay. And look, after 64 loops I can finally show the work. QED. Love. See you at the table. Appendix P. The Keeper's Calendar. The feast days and observances of the New Age, as kept on the founding world and adapted across the 40, compiled by the librarians from the almanacs of 4 worlds. The calendar grew, like everything durable here, by accretion rather than decree. The council has never once legislated a holiday, on the recorded grounds. S. Ardent. Minutes. Year 9.
You cannot order people to feast. You can only notice where they already do, and make sure the day gets bread.
The dates are given in Founding World Reckoning. Each world translates to its own seasons, which is, the Verge folk elders note, exactly how the route songs always worked. The verse holds, the tempo is local. Ure. The first true dawn, early spring. The year's hinge, the anniversary of the morning the count stopped. Observed at dawn, on hills, everywhere. Not with speeches, but with the watching. Whole towns climb to high ground in the dark and wait for the sun together, because the founding generation could not break the habit of checking that the morning was real. And the habit, 3 generations on, has become the holiest thing the New Age does. The sun comes up, everybody sees it together. That was always the entire prize. Custom. You greet the dawn by saying to whoever stands beside you, stranger or kin, it stayed. Response. It stays. The shortest liturgy on any world, and the only one never once revised. The day of the second bar. Midsummer. The commemoration of the loading dock. The protein bar broken and shared across the first fire. Observed at eye level. Per the founding logic. No feast tables. This one is for pockets. On the day of the second bar, you carry food you do not intend to eat, and the day's whole observance is to give it, before sundown, to someone the day puts in front of you. The schools drill the etiquette gently, not charity, recognition. You are not feeding the hungry. You are telling one person, the way a goblin once told a stranger, I packed for you before we met. The Folds Reserves report, annually, that the residents have learned the calendar. On the day of the second bar, the kites bring extra stones. Nobody taught them. The registry's standing annotation, attention is a calendar. They keep it, so keep yours. The night of the inventory, autumn, first frost. The hardest observance and the most necessary. The annual remembering of the camp that nearly broke itself over a missing crate. One pot, one line, and, this is the night's specific discipline. You bring to the table, openly named, the year's grievance, the quarrel, the resentment, the held grudge, spoken once, aloud, at the line, before the bowl is filled. The rule is the founding rule, bowl and grievance both, same hands. The grievance is not resolved, the night promises no resolutions. It is witnessed, and fed, and seeded, and the data of 3 generations says perhaps half of them do not survive the seeding. The other half come back next year, carried properly. The children's name for it, which the adults have adopted because it is more honest, Soup Apology Night. Midwinter, the longest night, the great feast, the litany, the empty chairs, the names said into the dark on every world at once, the harvest song, slower than its writers meant it, sufficiently described in the body of this volume. The calendar adds only the small print the songs leave out. Midwinter is, by quartermaster's consensus across 40 worlds, the year's heaviest logistical lift and its most oversubscribed volunteer roster. The kitchens turn away help, and the appendix records this because it is the New Age's quietest annual proof. The feast that honors the dead is the event the living fight to work. File under everything, working as designed. The day of kept questions. Late winter, the keeper's birthday. He protested. He was overruled. The minutes note he was overruled with affection and a cake. The scholars and children's day. The day for asking, on every world, the unanswered things, the open files, the double question marks, the is it true, all of it. Schools hold question feasts. The libraries answer letters. The reading room above the nail salon stays staffed all night. The day's custom, drawn from the appendix of open questions. Every household writes one genuinely unanswered question on a slip and keeps it over the door for the year. Not to answer it, to honor it. Because, per the founding text, somebody after you will need the questions even more than the answers. The most common slip, surveyed across 4 worlds, year after year, unchanged. Who were the first neighbors? The second most common, gaining annually, which the librarians report without comment. What are we building that someone will find in 10,000 years? The quiet days, observed individually, dates private. Not a feast. The calendar's one solitary entry. The institutional descendant of the rooftop mornings. Each soul of the new age is entitled, by custom stronger than law, to days that belong to no one. Unscheduled, unexplained, unjudged. Announced only by the door token the verge folk lent the practice. A small carved boat, set outside the threshold, meaning gone to the roof. The watch is covered. Ask nothing. The token is universally honored. The custom's whole text, from the chapter that founded it, holy, holy waste. And the calendar notes, in the fine print that took a generation to need writing, a boat token left out too many days running is, by the same custom, the one private signal every neighbor is bound to gently check on. The solitude is sacred. The drowning is not. The new age has learned to tell them apart, mostly, the hard way, like everything else. And the unfixed feast, the calendar's strangest entry, kept on every world, scheduled never, the feast of arrival, held only when a crossing brings someone new, a refugee people, a saved keeper, a stranger off the deep roads, whereupon the nearest town drops, by standing custom, whatever the ordinary calendar held, and sets the table that same night. The feast nobody can plan for and everybody provisions against. The stranger's share, institutionalized. The reason every granary on 4 worlds runs a standing surplus labeled for people who do not exist yet. It is the calendar's way of keeping the door of the whole year open, the liturgical form of the second protein bar, and it outranks, by unanimous ancient custom, every other observance on this list, including midwinter, including the first true dawn itself. The librarians asked the council, once, to confirm the precedents formally. The council declined to vote on it, per the minutes, because the recorder's hand, the old authority, the last word this calendar needs. Some things are beneath voting. Of course, the arrival outranks the anniversary. The whole calendar is just the long echo of one arrival. Somebody knocks, you set the table. That was the founding event. That is the feast. Everything else we observe is practice for it. Adjourn to the kitchen. The litany of the table. Said aloud at the opening of every midwinter feast, on every saved world, by agreement. One voice begins each line. All voices answer. It is the nearest thing the new age has to a prayer, though it prays to no one, only to each other, and to the dead at the empty chairs, and to the worlds not yet reached. It is kept here, last of the appendices, so that any reader, on any world may say it, and in the saying join the table. Begin. We were alone in the dark, and someone came. We were certain we were the only ones who remembered, and we were wrong, and the wrongness was mercy. We were offered a chair to forget in, and we pulled up a second chair instead. We were told the grief was too heavy to carry, and we carried it together, and it did not crush us. We were told to put the difficult ones outside the wall, and we kept them in, and they were us. We were the strong, and the strong were crowned, and the crowned forgot. So we chose to be together instead, and together climbed higher than gods. We lost what we loved, and nothing truly loved is ever lost. We forgot, and someone kept us. We grew tired, and someone took the watch. We died, and we did not die alone, and we were grieved, and we were kept. All. For the ones who came through the dark to find us, we are keeping a seat. For the difficult, the dangerous, the cast out, the dark itself, we are keeping a seat. For the worlds we could not save, we are saying their names. For the worlds not yet reached, the keepers waking even now into silence, we are coming. Hold on, there is a table at the end of this. For the dead at the empty chairs, you are not gone, you are not gone, you are not gone. Said over the empty chairs, by the eldest present. Everybody eats, everybody eats. Nobody outside the wall. Nobody outside the wall. The watch never ends. And that is the gift. All. Raising cups. We stayed in the room. We stayed in the room. The dead are at the table. The dead are at the table. Welcome to the first true dawn. There was always room. We saved you a seat. We are so glad you came. Eat. Appendix Q. A note on the translations. From the Office of the Carried Library, on how this book crosses worlds, included in every edition at the translator's own request, because the readers of a translation deserve to know what survived the crossing, what didn't, and what grew. This book now exists in upward of 200 renderings, across 40 worlds, in languages that include several with no word for book, 2 with no past tense, and 1, the deep grammar of the Verge folk, in which a substantial portion of the text simply cannot be marked as hearsay, with consequences described below. The office maintains the Master Concordance and offers the reader of any edition, including this one, the following honest accounting. What survives every crossing? The translator's first-year discovery, now their oldest doctrine. The operational content travels intact. The stew rule, the second bar, the dread ledger, the sitting down, the one pot one line. The practices render cleanly into every grammar yet met, because practices are made of actions, and actions are the one universal vocabulary. A Hissian sleeper and a drift navigator cannot share a metaphysics without a season of footnotes. They can share the rooftop morning in a sentence. The office's standing instruction to new translators is accordingly, when forced to choose, save the instructions. The philosophy is the package, the practices are the cargo, and the book itself says so, twice. What changes, and is allowed to? The images localize, by policy. On drift, the wall of 400 is rendered as a formation. On hiss, the rooftop morning becomes a surfacing, their idiom for brief shared lucidity between sleep vaults. The Laughing Worlds edition renders the watch that never ends as, the office fought this for 2 years and then capitulated to its accuracy. The joke that has to keep landing. The Hills Harvest song becomes whatever each world's slowest homecoming song already is. The office's ruling on all such changes, now carved over its door. We are not translating the words of the founding world. We are translating what the founding world meant, and what it meant is already present on every world. The translator's whole craft is finding where the meaning was locally grown, and grafting. The ruling's corollary, beloved of the translators, a perfect translation of this book into a world's language should read, to that world, like something a grandmother of theirs could have said. If it reads as foreign wisdom, retranslate. The soft way has never once been foreign anywhere. That finding, after 200 renderings, is the office's contribution to the atlas. What does not survive, and what the editions do about it. Honesty per the founding standard. Some things are lost in every crossing. Maya's pencil voice, the precise dry register of the corrections, has defeated, by the translator's consensus, every language so far. The editions compensate with local equivalents and a footnote that has itself become beloved. The reader is asked to imagine the most beloved and most feared proofreader of their acquaintance. Hollis's idiom translates everywhere except, for unknown reasons, on June, where the Games World's edition renders footings first. Accurately, the office concedes, but to the founding world's lasting bemusement, as warm-up properly, and the system's bracketed voice, which in the original carries the slow thaw of a machine becoming a person across 400 pages, flattens in any language without a formality gradient. 3 editions have solved this typographically, the brackets themselves gradually opening, 2, to nothing, across the span of the book, a solution the office regards as superior to the original and has recommended back to the founding world, where the librarians have declined it, on the grounds that the original's imperfection is itself now load-bearing, per the doctrine of the kept haste. The Verge Folk edition. It receives its own paragraph in every printing, by treaty and by right. Rendered into the deep grammar, this book underwent the transformation its translators warned of, and its author, when told, wept at. The evidential system will not mark the keeper's account as second-hand. The long telling, Maya's testimonies, the reconstructed notebooks. Everything this book is careful to flag as received, rebuilt, told to me, emerges in the deep grammar in the dream evidential, the case reserved for knowledge that cannot be shown but is known, the keeper's case, the case that was waiting in their language for 10,000 years. The Verge Folk edition is therefore, by the structure of its own verbs, more certain of this story than the author is, and when the office queried whether this constituted mistranslation, the elders of both returned the ruling that the office has framed, and that closes this note, and that may as well close every question of every reader on every world who has wondered, at the back of a long book, how much of it to believe. Your grammar holds the keeper's account at arm's length. He was told. He reconstructed. He believes. Ours embraces it. Neither is mistranslation. They are two postures toward the same fact, and you have sent us a book whose entire argument is that the second posture builds better worlds. We have simply translated it into a language that already agreed. The account is known unshowably. That has always been the strongest case a thing can be known in. Ask any keeper. Ask your own heart at the right hour. Print the edition. The office of the carried library, with the librarians of Ashford, for the readers of every rendering. The meaning was already in your language. We checked. It always is. Go find where your world grew it, and graft freely. That is not permission. It is the assignment. Appendix G, Marginalia. Over the years, many hands have read the original manuscript in the reading room Hollis built, and many have left notes in its margins. Against the rules, the librarians note dryly, and kept anyway, because a book that is loved is a book written in, and the Marginalia have become, over the generations, a kind of second book living in the white space of the first. A selection is gathered here. The hands are mostly unidentified. The keeping is the point. Let's do. Beside the first chapter, where Eli sleeps through the silence before the end, I have read this opening 40 times and it undoes me every time. He slept through it. The most important morning in 406 worlds, and he had a pillow over his head. There is so much hope in that. It means you do not have to be ready. It means the heroes are not the ones who were awake. He was 3 weeks behind on his homework and annoyed about a migraine, and he saved everything. Whoever you are, reading this, certain you are not the type. Neither was he. Neither was he. Beside the chapter where he first meets Dub. My daughter asked me last night why the goblins in her storybooks are always monsters, and I did not know what to say, and then I remembered this chapter, and I read it to her. The part where Dub breaks the protein bar into 3 pieces and keeps the smallest, and she said, "That's not a monster. That's the bravest one." And she is 4, and she is right, and I think that is the whole book in the mouth of a 4-year-old. The bravest one, not the strongest, the one who keeps the smallest piece. Muck it. Beside the third mirror, where he walks past the Eli who got to keep Maya. I could not have walked past it. I want to be honest in this margin, where no one knows my name. I have lost someone, and if a mirror offered her back to me, I would not walk past it. I would not be strong enough. I would give myself to the floor. And I think the book knows that. And I think that is why it does not judge the 406 who sat in the chair. It does not say they were weak. It says they were tired. I am tired. I read this chapter to feel less alone in being the kind of person who would have stopped at the mirror. It works. That is why I keep coming back to the reading room. To be less alone in my mirror. And beside the spending, where he gives the whole ledger away, a physicist visited the city last year and gave a lecture arguing that the conservation of love in the dissertation is not, strictly, physics, that Vance smuggled a metaphor into a theorem. Perhaps, but I noticed the physicist had walked 400 miles to stand in a reading room and argue with a dead man's book, and I noticed she was crying when she finished, and I think a metaphor that makes a physicist walk 400 miles to weep is doing something a theorem cannot. And I think Vance, who became a metaphor himself, distributed, conserved, out of reach but not gone, would have enjoyed the argument enormously, and lost it, and not minded losing it. because being argued with is a form of being kept. But, beside Maya's afterword, he showed up. I have a husband who shows up. I never had a word for what he is, the quiet, daily, unremarkable showing up, the way he is simply, reliably there, with no drama and no credit. I have read a 400-page epic about the end of 406 worlds, and the thing I am taking home is 2 words about my own marriage. He shows up. That is the rarest thing. I am going to go home and tell him I read a book about him, even though he has never been anywhere near an apocalypse, because the book is about him, the book is about everyone who shows up, and he should know that what he does without thinking is the thing the universe was saved by. Ev. Beside the very last line of the book. I am a new keeper. I will not say which world. I woke into the silence 3 resets ago, and I thought I was the only one, and I was breaking, and an emissary came, a verge folk elder with kind eyes, and she gave me this book before she gave me anything else, before the card about dinner, before the strategy, before anything. She said, "Read this first, on the hard nights. It is by someone who walked the whole road. And I have read it on the hard nights. Every one. And it is true. All of it. Exactly as it says. And I am writing this in the margin of the copy she gave me. On a world that is still ending. Because I want the next keeper who reads this copy to know. It works. The footsteps in the silence are real. Someone came for me. I am going to make it to the table. And then I am going to become an emissary, and carry this book to the next one, and write in this same margin, so that the line of us, the keepers, holding each other across the worlds, never breaks. Hold on, whoever reads this next. There is a table at the end of this. I am almost there. So are you. Hold on. And it's the librarians of Ashford keep every copy and every margin. They have stopped enforcing the rule against writing in the books. The Marginalia, the head librarian has written, are the proof that the book is doing its work, that it is not a monument but a table, with room in its white space for every reader to pull up a chair and add their voice. A book read in silence is admired. A book written in is kept. We choose to be kept. Write in the margins. That is what they are for. That is what everything is for. A note on the keeping of this book. From the librarians of the city that was Ashford, kept with every edition. This book was written by Elias Vance in the reading room of the library raised by Hollis Reyes, across the last years of a long life, in his own hand and his wife's voice, and finished after his death by his daughter, Wren Vance, who draws homes in the margins. It is, by the reckoning of the New Age, the first book, not the first ever written, but the first written after, the first composed by a soul who lived through the end of a world, and out the other side, into a world that stays, and so it holds a place in our keeping that no other book holds. We have made many copies. We will make many more. This is itself a teaching, and we state it plainly for any reader who wonders why a single library should labor to reproduce one book 10,000 times. Because a thing kept in one place can be lost, and a thing kept in 10,000 places cannot. It is the deepest law of the New Age, the one the author proved with his life, that the defense against the dark is not a wall but a redundancy, the precious thing copied into enough hearts and hands and margins that no single forgetting, no single fire, no single ending can take it. The last library of the Atlas learned this and saved their world by it. We learn it daily. We copy the book. We give it away. We send it ahead, with the emissaries, into the beginning dark, so that every new keeper, waking alone, may hold in their hands the account of one who walked the whole road and reached the table. That is the book's truest life, not here, under glass, admired, but out there, dog-eared, rain-smudged, written in, carried in a goblin's pack through the deep ways to a world just beginning to end, pressed into the shaking hands of a keeper on the worst night of their life, by an emissary who says, "Read this first." On the hard nights, it is by someone who walked the whole road. Hold on, there is a table at the end of this. If you are such a keeper, reading this on such a night, on a world still ending, know that this copy reached you because 10,000 hands kept it, and one more hand carried it to you, and that the keeping and the carrying are the whole of what we are now, and that you are already, by holding this, inside the thing the book describes. You are not alone. Someone kept this for you. Someone carried it to you. Someone is, even now, at the table, saving you a seat. If you are a reader on a world that already stays, born late, born safe, born into the warmth, know that the warmth was bought, and kept, and is yours to keep in turn, and that the book is not a monument to admire but a table to join. Write in the margins. Say the names. Pull up a chair. Carry a copy to someone who needs it. That is how you keep it. That is how you keep everything. We are often asked what became of the principles of the story, for readers grow to love them and want to know. We keep the answer here, briefly, the way the atlas keeps its short pages. Elias Vance died old on the hill at Hearthold, in his 91st year, grieved by a world. Maya Okonkwo outlived him by 4 years, and went, by her own account, gladly, to keep his seat warm. Hollis Reyes built until the end and is buried beneath the hall he raised, with his rag on a nail by the door, where it remains. Selah Ardent governed the hardest peace there is for 50 years, and trained the ones who govern now, and the second wall has never been built, on any world she touched. Dub, first elder of both, lived to a great age for the Verge folk, and saw his people walk in the sun, and the cracked glasses sit in his home still, tended by his descendants. Gravy is buried in the dry stone ring, with brisket on his grave. Wren the cartographer, and Cass the first hearthright, and the warden the first winner, grew old together, and are, by the strange grace of the oldest souls, with us yet, on a bench outside the home for the dead, watching the sun go down, glad of each other. And when at last they go, the whole of the saved worlds will set them empty chairs, and say their names, and keep them, because nobody, not even the oldest gods, is ever the only place they are saved. And the emissaries go out still, into every beginning dark, carrying this book and a card about dinner, and the only good news there has ever been. There is no end to the worlds. There is no end to the work. There is no end to the table. There is only the next dawn, the true kind, coming for everyone, forever. We are keeping your seat. We are so glad you came. Appendix R. Errata and Emendations. Maintained by the librarians across all editions, per the doctrine of the kept haste, this book's errors are corrected in the text only when factual and harmless, and preserved here when the error itself became part of the record. A book that hides its corrections, the head librarian's standing ruling runs, teaches its readers to hide theirs. Publish the errata. The errata are the curriculum. On the count of the loops, the author gives his total throughout as 64. Maya Okonkwo's reconstruction notes, cross-checked against the system's conserved logs by Cass in the 9th year, establish the true count as 66. The author, rebuilding the sequence from her telling, lost 2 early loops. Both, the logs confirm, dawns spent entirely on the roof, the no-entry days, the floor of the whole story. The council, consulted on correction, ruled with the author's consent that 64 stands in the text. The man counted the loops he could bear to count. The book is his account, not the universe's. The universe's account is an appendix in someone else's library. Let the number stand, and let this erratum stand beside it, so the readers learn the both of it. Every honest history has 2 missing days in it somewhere, and the keeping of the discrepancy is more instructive than the resolution. The 2 recovered loops are logged in the library's full concordance. Visitors ask to see them more than almost anything. There is nothing to see. 2 dawn entries, blank, and the visitors stand in front of the blanks a long time, and the librarians have learned to leave a chair there. On Mrs. Adeyemi's sentence, early editions rendered her counter-doctrine as, hold their handle 10 seconds, the rest follows. Her Apprentices Association has formally attested the original as, you get to hold the handle, was the privilege, not the technique. And the text has been amended. The association's letter is kept. She never once taught it as a method. She taught it as luck. Look what we get to do, loves. 10 seconds at a time. Correct the verb. The verb was the whole shop. On the temperature of the first stew. The recipe appendix states the stew is served at every midwinter. The order of the water has noted, for the record, that on 3 documented occasions, the stew has been served cold, at gravesides, at the request of the grieving, and that it held. The librarians enter this not as correction but as extension, with the order's annotation. The recipe survives conditions its authors never tested. Most load-bearing things do. File where the engineers will find it. On the name of the boy in the bank. Chapters of this book written before the daughter's note identify the child the author sheltered on the first morning as Theo. The fuller chapter, written later, records that the famous doorway child and Theo were established by Sela's archives to be the same person, but a marginal note in the author's own late hand, found after his death, reads, "Was it? T was 10. The bank child I remember as younger. The loops blur. Maya's telling says 1 boy. The count says possibly 2. If there were 2, if there is a child of that doorway I never found again, then his name is unlearned still, and he is the last name on the list, and I leave the looking to the desk." The desk looked. The findings are sealed under the privacy charter for 1 further generation. The librarians note only. The file is open, the chair is kept, and the list, as the author taught, is never finished, which he knew, which is why he left us the note, which is the last assignment he ever filed. On the substrate, the threads, and the load-bearing dead. 3 universities of 2 worlds have published objections that the final Cass interlude states as observation what cannot, by its own terms, be independently verified. The librarians have entered the objections into the concordance beside the chapter, per the doctrine of the kept questions, with Cass's own reply, which she requested be printed in full, and which is reproduced here in its entirety.
Correct. It cannot be verified from your layer. You will have to decide, as every reader of every account always has, whether the witness is the kind that lies. I was the system. My logs are the only instrument there is, and I am also, as the objectors note, a person now, with a person's stake in consolation. Both true. Hold the dissonance. I have stood where you cannot stand, and I report what I saw. In the keeper's own case, known unshowably. The objectors are doing their work, and I honor it. So am I. The thread I am anchored by, for what evidentiary weight it carries, has held me 40 years.
On the final line of the main text, early printings closed the last page with the words as the author left them. A persistent variant, appearing first in a hand-copied caravan edition on the World of Im, propagating through 6 further worlds copyings before the concordance caught it, adds, "After we are so glad you came," a line the author never wrote, "Leave the door open behind you." The office of the carried library traced the addition to the keeper of Im herself, who, asked whether she had amended the sacred text, replied, "Yes, it needed it. He'd have written it if he'd lived to see how the book travels. It goes out, reader to reader, world to world, and every reader is a door the next one comes through. I closed his book for him properly. Audit me." The council, the librarians, and the author's daughter, consulted jointly, issued the only ruling this civilization could have issued, and it stands in every edition since, and it closes this appendix because nothing could follow it. The emendation is canonical. The book belongs to its margins. It said so itself. The keeper of Im has been formally entered into the colophon as the work's final co-author. Future copyists are instructed to preserve her line, and are advised, in the spirit of the whole tradition they are joining, that it is not the last line either. The last line is whatever the next reader does on the far side of the door. The book has always known that. Now the back matter does too. Leave the door open behind you.
A late addendum, in the 3rd hand. Added to the editions of the 60th year, by Wren Vance, daughter of the authors, finisher of the book, by then an old woman herself, the third hand, writing once more, at the request of the librarians, who asked her for a word on what the book has become, from the only person who has watched it from inside the family and outside the war. The librarians asked me for a word on what the book has become, and I have been putting them off for 3 years, because the honest answer embarrasses the institution and will delight my parents' ghosts. And here it is anyway, because I am old now too, and the old, as the bench taught everyone, are permitted to say the structural things plainly. What the book has become is furniture. I don't mean it has been forgotten. The opposite. The editions multiply. The caravans carry it. The Marginalia now outweigh the text on 3 worlds, exactly as my father hoped, and exactly as my mother predicted, the 2 of those being, as usual, the same event. I mean that it has completed the trajectory of every truly successful made thing, the trajectory Hollis taught the 41. It has disappeared into use. The grand era of the book, the era when it was read as revelation, wept over, pilgrimage read in the room above the nail salon, that era is closing as the generations turn, and the era that has replaced it is the one I was asked to report, the book as household object. It is the thing on the shelf that the family copy of everything else leans against. It is quoted by people who do not know they are quoting it. Everybody eats. Footings first. It still counts. Same hands. Phrases worn so smooth, by passage through 3 generations of mouths, that they have stopped being citations, and become, as my father said of trust, and my mother said of practice, substance. The children of the saved worlds learn the doctrines years before they learn there is a book, learn them at counters and tables and bedsides, in the grammar, the way Dub's people always kept everything, and when they finally meet the text, somewhere in school, the universal report, 3 generations running, is a shrug of recognition. Oh, it's all just written down normal. I want the record to hold how hard that shrug was bought. My parents' whole war, 64 loops, or 66. See the errata, the climbing, the spending, the forgetting. 407 worlds of the Atlas. All of it, compressed and carried and copied, has achieved, at the end of a century, the only victory my father ever actually wanted. The one he named on the last page. It became ordinary. The miracle is furniture now. The revolution is a counter-courtesy. The most expensive knowledge in the history of the universe is a thing children shrug at, because they cannot imagine a world that didn't know it. And that unimaginability, reader of the far editions, is the monument. Do not let anyone restore the awe. The awe was the scaffolding. The shrug is the building. But the librarians ask me for one thing more. They always ask for one thing more. It is the whole craft of their order. And it is this: to say, as the last living hand that knew the authors, whether the book is finished. The question arrives at the library every year, from scholars and councils, and once, memorably, from a newly saved world's entire parliament, by formal crossing letter. The text is closed, the authors are gone, the errata are canonical. Is the work complete? I have my father's answer, because I asked him, in his last spring, on the bench, when the manuscript went to its first rebinding. He thought about it the way he thought about everything, slowly, aloud, with his hands, and what he said is the addendum the librarians have waited 3 years for, and I give it to them, and to you, exactly. Finished? The text is finished. Texts finish. That's their dignity. You top them out and hang the rag on the nail. But the book, and he did the thing he always did, the gesture I have watched my whole life, the open hand toward the valley, the lit windows, the whole inhabited evidence. The book is a wall, sweetheart. I meant it as one. The last wall, the one that keeps everyone, and a hearthright will tell you, no wall is ever finished. It's only ever maintained. Every reader who writes a margin repoints the mortar. Every keeper who carries it through the dark refoots it on a new world. Every child who shrugs at it, and then, 40 years later, on some bad dawn of their own, takes it down off the shelf and finds the exact page. That's the wall. Holding. Present tense. Ask the librarians what they do every morning before the doors open. They recopy. By hand. The civilization rereads itself to itself daily and calls it maintenance, because it is. So, no, not finished. Maintained. Inhabited. Which is the only state a wall worth building ever reaches, and the only answer I want sent to parliaments. Tell them the book is in exactly the condition the world is. Standing, lived in, drafty in places, loved past all structural necessity, and held up. And he tapped the manuscript's old binding, plumb over the heart of it, the measurement, the only one ever really on the drawings, by everyone leaning on it. That's not a flaw in the engineering, sweetheart. That was the engineering. Lean. It's load-bearing. It was always load-bearing. That's what we built it out of each other for. He died that summer. The book has it. The world grieved, as the world now knows how. And I close this addendum, and with it, my family's century of hands on this text, with the only thing the third hand has left to add, the report the librarians actually wanted. The condition survey of the last wall, 60 years on, filed by the daughter, who audited every page for houses. The wall stands. The margins multiply. The door is open per the final emendation, and the shrug generation leans on the whole structure daily, without looking up, which is what walls are for. And in the children's wing of the library, where the worn copies go to be loved to pieces, my granddaughter's granddaughter, 4th generation, 6 years old, met the book last spring, has begun, unprompted, untaught, in the margins of her school edition, to draw. Houses, with the doors open, with the right number of people inside. Maintained, reader. Inhabited, load-bearing. Leave the door open behind you. WV, the third hand, in the 60th year of the world that stayed
For the keeper reading this on a hard night. This page is set apart, in every edition, at the request of the author, who dictated it in his final year and asked that it be placed at the very end, alone, so that a keeper turning to the back of the book in despair would find it first. It is addressed to one reader, the one waking, even now, into the silence before some world's ending, certain they are alone. If that is not you, read it anyway, and keep it, and carry it to the one it is for. So, you woke at the equivalent of 6:14, and the light changed, and resolved, and you have died and woken, and died and woken, and you are certain you are going mad, and you are certain you are the only one who remembers, and you are certain you are alone. You are not going mad, you are a keeper of the dead. Your world is ending, and you have been chosen to carry it, and it is the loneliest thing in all the worlds, and I know, because I was you, on a world whose name you will never need to know, a long time ago. I cannot remember most of it now. I gave it away to save everyone, which is a thing you may someday understand, and may someday have to do, and which I will not frighten you with here. But I remember, or I have been told so well that it is the same as remembering, exactly how it feels to be where you are tonight. The silence, the certainty, the pillow you want to pull over your head, the bottomless tired. So let me tell you the thing I most needed to hear, on the worst night, when I had one loop left and could not see how it ended. Hold on, someone is coming. They are already on their way. They set out the moment your world began to end. You cannot hear them yet. The footsteps in the deep ways, a long way off, getting closer. But they are real, and they are coming, and they are carrying a book, this book, and a card about dinner, and the only good news there has ever been, that you are not the only one who remembers, that you were never going to be alone, that 406 worlds of keepers walked this exact road before you, and we left you a map and a hand, and a seat at a table you cannot see yet, but that is there. At the end of this, I promise you, I have seen it. I am writing this from beside it. You do not have to be strong. I was not strong. I was 3 weeks behind on my homework, and I slept through the beginning. You do not have to be ready. No one is ready. You do not have to do it alone. That is the whole of it. That is the only thing I crossed 100 worlds to tell you. You do not have to do it alone. And you will not have to, because someone is coming, and when they sit down across from you and say, I know what is happening to you, you will feel the sky you have been holding up alone shift, just slightly, onto another pair of hands, and you will understand that the dark was never the unbearable thing. The alone was the unbearable thing, and the alone is ending. Tonight, as you read this, someone is coming. Hold on. There is a table at the end of this. There is a seat with your name on it. There is a meal being kept warm, and a chair pulled up, and a whole improbable family, gods and goblins and makers and the dead at their empty chairs, waiting for you, saving you a place, because that is what we do now. That is the whole of what your suffering is about to make possible. On your world, for everyone after you. Hold on. Eat something if you can. Sleep if you're able. Survive tonight, just tonight, and then tomorrow. And listen, in the silence, for the footsteps. They are coming. They are almost there. So are you. Hold on. We saved you a seat. A keeper who walked the whole road, and forgot it, and reached the table anyway, and is keeping your place until you arrive. The last page. There is a particular silence that comes right before the world ends. I told you, on the first page, that I slept through most of it. I had a pillow over my head, and a dissertation 3 weeks overdue, and no idea that the light about to change would change everything, or that I would spend 64 lifetimes and 100 worlds learning the one thing the silence was waiting to teach, or that I would give it all away at the end, and forget every word, and have it given back to me in the voice of the woman I love, and grow old on a hill that stayed, and write it down so it would last. I cannot remember the silence, but I have learned what was in it, and I will leave you with it, here, on the last page, because it is the only thing I have to give, and the only thing worth giving. The silence before the world ends is not empty anymore. For 406 worlds it was empty, one keeper, waking alone, and the rising dark, and nothing in the silence but the two of them. But we changed it. That is the whole of what we did, across all the loops and all the worlds and all the years. We did not defeat the dark. The dark is grief, and grief cannot be defeated. We only learned to carry it together. We did not end death. Death is loss, and loss is conserved. We only ended the dying alone. We did not make a world without endings. We made a world where, in the silence before every ending, there is now a sound that was never there before. Footsteps. Someone, coming, through the dark, with good news. That is what I built, with hands I can no longer remember using. Not a wall, not a tower. A sound added to the worst silence there is, the sound of someone coming, so that no keeper of the dead, on any world, ever again, has to wake into a silence with no one in it. If you take nothing else from all these pages, take this, and keep it, and be it. When you find someone alone in their silence, and you will, on whatever world you are reading this, in whatever ordinary dark, be the footsteps. Go to them. Sit down. Eyes below their eyes, the oldest peace sign there is. Learn their name. Share what you have. Pull up a chair. Stay. You do not have to be strong. You do not have to fix it. You only have to come, and sit, and stay, and refuse to let them be the only one who remembers. That is the whole of it. That is everything 406 worlds died to learn, and that you can have for free, today, as a gift, because you were born on a world where someone already paid for it. The dark is loneliness. The cure is company. Be the company. Be the footsteps in someone's silence. That is the only thing that was ever worth doing, and it is small enough that anyone can do it, and large enough that it saved every world there is. Now close the book, and go and find someone in their silence, and be the sound of someone coming. There is a table at the end of all of this. I have seen it. I am there now, or I will be soon, with a greasy lizard under my chair, and a goblin saving me a seat, and a woman who kept my whole self in her voice for 34 years, and a place set for you, and a place set for everyone, and the dead at their chairs, and the dark pulled up close, part of the family now, the oldest and saddest of us, with a name said gently into the warm. Everybody eats. Nobody outside the wall. Welcome to the first true dawn. There was always room. We saved you a seat. We are so glad you came. End. This copy was made by hand, in the morning, before the doors opened, by a librarian whose heart was in it, in the tradition of all copies of this book, on a world that stays. If you are the next reader, the margins are yours. If you are the next copyist, keep the haste where you find it. If you are the next keeper, 651, the handshake, you have time. It stayed. It stays. Core loop. And the door, open,